top 5 quarterbacks in the Big 12. This was we had a bit of a debate on it because it took us a minute because there are so many new quarterbacks or guys coming off bad years or whatever. But number 5, John Rhys Plumlee. Or John Rhys Plumlee, I'm sorry. John Rhys Plumlee from UCF, super athlete, has won a ton of games for them. His biggest problem is staying healthy. He's not a really big guy, so I think he takes some of those hits and gets a little banged up. But I'm very excited to see him play in the Big 12 Conference. He's a very fun player, big play guy, and brings an exciting offense with Gus Malzahn into the league this year.
Yeah. He seems to is he erratic in your opinion?
I just think he's not consistently healthy. So that probably, and he's not look, you're not, if you're Gus Malzahn calling a bunch of plays for John Rhys Plumlee where he's going to throw you to a bunch of victories. Right. You are putting John Rhys Plumlee back there to go be an athlete and create. Yeah. And that's what he does. And that's why he's so much fun. But, he's not going to, John Elway you to a win where it's like, how are you making these throws? Or Aaron Rodgers, he's just going to create things.
He's gutty.
He's a terrific athlete. He can run all over a defense. And, he's a talented guy who's also a pretty good baseball player. And I think that he'll be, one of the better quarterbacks in the league on paper entering next season. If they had more of a changeover at quarterback, I maybe would be a little bit more pessimistic about UCF. But he's one of the reasons that I'm not overly pessimistic about UCF. I'm not super optimistic either. They're just going to run into the Big 12 and start, dominating or anything. But I do think that, he gives them a better chance to come in and make something happen more quickly than, Houston having to change over quarterbacks or BYU changing over quarterbacks or Cincinnati changing over coaches. I like of the 4, he's definitely far and away the best new quarterback entering the league.
Yeah, he kind of seems to have it in his neck.
No, he's fun. He's certainly fun. He's not afraid of anything. Number 4, I think this is, if I had to pick everybody from outside the Big 12's favorite Big 12 quarterback, just because of the story of this team, it might be Jalen Daniels because he's fun to watch, a gamer, can do it with his arms, can do it with his legs. You kept every game that he played, Kansas was either winning or in. And I think you have to look no further back than their bowl game against Arkansas, which was, into those multiple overtimes. But Jalen Daniels, man, just an absolute playmaker, winner, a guy who has elevated that team. I'm curious to see if they can get over 500 this year. The schedule's weird for a lot of teams. We'll see, but another year of him starting, and if he wasn't out for that stretch, they might have had another win or two under their belts in Lawrence.
Yeah, he's just a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very good player, and they certainly fell off without him last year. I mean, as far as wins and losses go, and he's a terrific athlete, terrific leader, and I wonder what happens if he doesn't get hurt, like you said. I mean, there's probably another win or two on that schedule, and that is obviously already a huge difference that was made, but an even bigger jump than was already well celebrated. So he's an electric guy, and I think that's a big reason why you're excited about the direction of Kansas football is not only just what Lance Leipold's doing in general, but the fact that you've got your quarterback and a stud like that back is that's huge news for the Jayhawks.
Number 3, Dillon Gabriel. Might have put him higher on this list had Oklahoma been a little bit better last year. Of course, if he's not injured for a couple stretches, maybe Oklahoma's got another kind of a similar thing going on there, but he was not the weak link at all to me, or should be to anybody for Oklahoma, but a lot of talent, a lot of athleticism, got, that same kind of gamer in him where he can kind of dig deep and make things happen. Let's see what happens year 2 in Brent Venables and Jeff Lebby's system and see what they've brought in to kind of help and surround him with. Last year was just something that Oklahoma as an institution is not used to. Like that kind of turnover, and for the reasons and all that, is just not something they were used to, and you could see it. But they're past it. They're through it now, and they're still Oklahoma, and they still have talent. So I expect a pretty large jump from them. Just don't know until you see it. But I think that having a veteran dude like Dillon Gabriel there certainly helps.
Yeah, he's a good leader. From all indications, I mean, obviously a good player. They should have beaten Texas Tech. He gets hurt very first play of overtime, or at least should have taken Tech to like double, triple overtime. He gets hurt right away, like literally first play. That was. I'm sorry, Jeff Lee. That was stupid. I mean, I get that maybe in another scenario,
throwback play.
Yeah, I mean, it's overtime. You've already seen what happens without him. You turn into one of the worst teams in college football, and you put the ball in his hands, I understand, but like the first play and he gets hurt, it's just incredible.
That's a fourth or fifth overtime play.
Yeah, I mean, that's just – but it's been fun for me as an Oklahoma fan who's covered Baylor for many years to see all of the complaints that, Baylor fans try to tell people about that offense and what some of the bugaboos of it are. And I saw a lot of people like, you don't know ball, you don't know whatever. That was Baylor. It's Oklahoma, buddy. And then what do you see, like, after the year's over? Where are the intermediate passes?
Yeah.
Why is everything – it's just like could have told you all of those things that come with that offense. It is brilliant when it's working great, but when it faces a little bit of adversity, it can shut down quick. And one of the big complaints was, why do we go so long in between scores? Like there's these droughts, and that's part of the deal. That's what you signed up for. That is that offense. It at its best is – the funnest thing in the world to watch, but when it bogs down, it looks like a vehicle with two flat tires sometimes, and so I'm curious to see how Lebby and Venables adjust. One of the other things, this was great. There was an article written by one of the beat writers on how long the defense was on the field. Like, what would have been the first thing you would have told Oklahoma fans is your defense is going to be on the field all the time, because one of the complaints was, why is the defense on the field? Well, the offense goes 3 and out every other series. That's that offense.
Or they score in 3 plays.
Or scores in 3 plays.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. It is feast or famine. This is not 15-play drives, and unless that is what they're absolutely trying to do, which most of the case it's not. So, I think I'm very curious to see what adjustments Venables makes, because everybody kind of gave them a mulligan year. Like, that was just his first year, transfer portal, everybody left, and Caleb Williams is gone and all that. And that's all very true. But now, I'm very interested in how they perform in year 2 with the lessons learned and what that looks like.
Yeah, I would say that offense is the Ricky Bobby of offenses, like first or last, baby.
Yeah. In so many ways.
When it's
can
on,
be.
it is it's as dynamic as you could imagine. But there are times when you might go 2 or 3 series, even if you're scoring points before that, and score a bunch after that, where you really kind of wonder. Now, there's also the ability in that offense, the way it was run in Waco, is your running game is supposed to be a lot more productive than people realize, because you think about throwing around, and Baylor would gouge people with 650 yards, and 300 of it would be the running game. Because the real fancy long throws, fades, and whatever, but they would pound people, and a lot of times they would just gash people with the running game, and Oklahoma needs to get back to that too.
If you want to go watch like the best example of that offense at its peak, in my opinion, and it's not just like the big bang plays, but go watch the fourth quarter of that TCU comeback, 61-58, and a majority of their points, like he throws the fade to Antoine Goodley and Corey Coleman, but Shock Linwood runs for like 150 yards in the fourth quarter, just straight up TCU's gut, play after play, and they have no answer for it. And that's when I love that offense the most, because you'd pound somebody with the run and then hit them with your fantastically talented wide receivers, and it was hard to have an answer for that. And that was that machine operating at its tip top. I don't know if it ever was as clean and dominant as that fourth quarter against TCU, but Oklahoma with Dillon Gabriel, that gives you a lot more optimism than if they were having to change QBs this year, even though I know a lot of people like Jackson Arnold.
Number 2, Quinn Ewers at Texas. I debated putting him number 1, except for the fact that we've got to see him pass Texas to a win, which I don't know was completely his fault last year, but he was not there yet. But you can see it. Like, you can see the skills that he has in that, and I do think that he's in for a jump this year as well. But last year, they had those times where they kind of abandoned Bijan Robinson because they thought they were getting stuffed, and then they were like, okay, it's kind of all on Quinn. Well, he just wasn't there yet. And
he was hurt.
And he was hurt, and he was dealing with all these things. So healthy Quinn Ewers should be able to pass into wins, especially with the receivers that they've got there coming back this year. Would think that's going to happen. So he is my number 2.
Yeah, I think it's a showcase year for him. I don't know that he's proven to be the number 2, but he could be potentially the number 2 or top quarterback. I mean, that's for argument's sake. I just know some people might prefer Jalen Daniels over, for what you're trying to do and the team you're on and all of that. But, yeah, I mean, we know the backstory for Quinn Ewers and the expectations, and I think those expectations lead you to believe that if he has a monster year, then he's probably entering the NFL draft, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he'll be eligible, and that's kind of – when he first came over from Ohio State, sort of what you figured the path would be is, hey, you already redshirted, play a couple years, 3 years into your college career, get the bolt, and we'll see if he can live up to those lofty expectations. But I do think that, yeah, they're going to lean a bit more on him. He's got incredible, talents, but he was still raw, and he was still getting experience last year. Like, everybody acts as though he had played, a couple years prior to that. He had redshirted and then transferred, so we didn't see much of him or any of him really at all. So, yeah, I mean, that was a good debut, but obviously much larger expectations this year with what all they bring back and just kind of the trajectory by the end of the year. You feel good about, what Sark's building, and he's a major part of that. But, man, if he has a couple bad games, you start hearing the arch calls and all that, I'm sure they've already planned all that and figured all of that out. But, yeah, I think Ewers is a very intriguing guy this year.
Yep. And number 1, Will Howard of Kansas State. Look, if not for Will Howard, Kansas State, and Adrian Martinez was having a good year, but if not for Will Howard coming in and adding a new dimension to that offense, Kansas State's probably not in the Big 12 title game, and they're not the Big 12 champs.
No, you're right.
Not.
Yeah, no, you're right. He was fantastic, and Martinez was having a fantastic year, and maybe things would have caught up to him, but no, Will Howard was
by his standards.
By Adrian Martinez standards, he was not great.
He was playing well,
but they had something going. Like I said, things eventually could have caught up with him, and they did. But yeah, Will Howard was a massive, adrenaline rush for that offense.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think
perfect time.
Yeah, the perfect time. I think that and he was someone who people forget. Like, he was thrown in as a 17-year-old freshman in the COVID year, and then kind of thrown in again, not ready. So he had like all of the weird, bad experiences that you could. And then when it was his time to come in again, it was like he had just shaken it all off and was ready to be the guy they recruited him to be. And it was fantastic for the Wildcats last year. And I really expect him. We'll see what they have weapons. Replacing Deuce Vaughn with Trayshawn Ward will be interesting to see. I think that is about as close as a comp as you can get, skill set wise. I saw a lot of Trayshawn Ward because he was at FSU. He's a pretty good player. He's a really good player. Deuce Vaughn, I don't think that he is, but there's not a lot of Deuce Vaughns out in the world that do what he did, and so. But Trayshawn Ward's a nice little replacement for that, and we'll see what they do as far as receivers and everything else goes. But, yeah, I'm still kind of bullish on Chris Kleiman in Kansas State. By the way, he'll be on the show next week.
Next Tuesday, we'll have both Sonny Dykes and Chris Kleiman on the show here on 365 Sports.
Yeah, Martinez had 2 monster games, and then it kind of petered out and he got hurt right after that. But, I mean, he had a huge game against Oklahoma, a 7-point win, and had a huge game against Texas Tech where his legs were really on display. He had 7 rushing touchdowns in those 2 weeks. Ran for 148 and 4 scores against OU, 171 and 3 scores against Tech, and then also had a passing touchdown in each. But, he was that particular stretch, late September and early October was pretty salty, but before and after that was just kind of, and he got hurt, obviously. And
got hurt against Baylor. Martinez?
I think he got hurt before that and then got really hurt against Baylor.
He was pulled against Baylor.
He had a good game against Texas, too, and a loss. I should add that as well. He had a pretty salty game there. So, yeah, maybe he was better than I remember it's overall last year. But I know that, Will Howard did come in and do a great job. And so, yeah, that's a big part of the reason why you feel like even with the talent they're losing, they're going to still be okay and maybe one of the favorites, if not the favorite again. I say a name that I think should be mentioned and should be an asterisk or maybe even some will argue top 5 is Tyler Shuck. from Texas Tech. I think that coming into next year, that's going to be a big reason why they're the favorites, because without him, they were a different team than when they had him. And I know it was very small sample size, but I don't think they lost with him starting last year.
At the end of the year, he was as good as anybody, and he made them very good. And what surprised me about Shuck is how much he could help them with his mobility, which I wasn't so sure was all there like that. But he was, he was
like, I don't know if
better
he put
than
him
I thought.
top 5, but I think he could have a case for it.
Yeah.
And I think by the end of next year, he might definitely be a top 5 guy based on what Tech does, because I think they've got pretty high expectations heading into next season, even more than what they already did, 8 wins last year.
Jalen Daniels knocked him out. Tyler Shuck. Like,
That's
when
fair.
we were trying to get to it, and then we got to Jalen Daniels, and we were like, oh, well, really would like to put Plumlee in here. I think he is more skins on the
that's
wall
not
over
why.
Shuck. But
you put in Jalen Daniels because he's from King.
no, she honestly, she's one of the ones.
It's ridiculous.
If the football stadium caught on fire, the only important thing is Bill Self getting out.
Yeah, is Allen Fieldhouse.
Was Allen Fieldhouse all right? Did Bill Self get out? That's all that's important.
I don't know if we believe you.